Phairos Studio allows you to map your world, and in this video we're going to quickly go into the broader sense of how this even works. Phairos Studio works with objects, so everything that you create will be created within an object. So let's start one. The very first object type that you have here is land. You always need to create land first. And you see that now on the left here, you have land in the object tree. This entire panel is your object tree. Everything from rivers to symbols to paths will be shown here. And on the lower left, you see the properties panel. So in land, this is just how you draw. For example, I can draw like this, or I can change the brush to draw like this. You can also, in this case, for example, have this different tab, which is library, which opens up real-world shapes that you can just place and combine as you like to create your own fantasy universe. So this was land, but there are 5 other object types that you can use. And that's river, paths, labels, symbols, and areas. And rivers is a good example of why Phairos Studio uses objects. So objects, I'm just going to place a river like this, can always be changed after they are placed. So if I now click with a right click into the screen, I deselected the object that I just created. And now you see here you have landmass and river. But I can always click on the river, either via this tree, or I hold down Control and then search for an entry point like this. And now I can again edit the river. And so, for example, I can click here on a node and fork the river like this. I can also move existing nodes. I can resize them. And here in the properties panel, I can change, how the river should more or less look like. So all of this is the concept of Phairos Studio. You can also move an entire object if you want to. That is true for rivers, but that is also true for lands. And another concept here is that you can create a parent-child relationship. So if I want to move the river always with the land, then I can drag this here into the land. And then when I select land, I press Control, and then I have this move button. When I move land, I move the river as well. So that should make it very handy for you if you have a rough idea of your world that you can draw first, maybe an island, but you're not sure really where to place it yet. You can even make details about this island and then just move the island later without having to redraw everything. The next object type here is path and border. This is very similar to river. You just draw your path. You choose some kind of texture that the path should have. Oftentimes this is this dotted line. You can change this from a regular path into a border by adding a glow. And maybe you don't even want the path itself, you maybe just want the glow. And this border can basically be changed as you like with different colors. So this is kind of up to you. Similar to rivers, this can also be forked. You have labels, that's obviously important. You want to label your world. And again, you can move these after the fact. You can create different labels. And again, here you can create child relationships. So if this label is supposed to be with the river, then if you move the river, the label will move as well. Then we have symbols. This is kind of the archaic way of placing your icons. So if you have, for example, mountain ranges that you want to place, you can certainly do that here, either as a brush or in single mode that you can place every single mountain. Here in the right panel, you have these kind of families. So these are differently colored. If you double click, you select the entire family, or you can just click once, then you can select whichever mountains you want, and they will be randomly sampled from your selection. And Phairos Studio comes with 2,000 of these icons from mountains, trees, buildings, creatures, everything you can think of, even heraldry. But there's a sort of more automated way of placing icons. So if you have a forest or a mountain, you might not care about every single icon individually. And this is where you want to use areas. Areas are very handy because you basically just draw a height profile, meaning you have, or density profile, let's call it that. So the longer you click, the more dense it will get. And let's create a forest here so that the icons will be placed where the density is higher. And you can change the density and size of the icons and recalculate this until you have something that you like this. You can also then change the color, of course. This is colored on a gradient, same as icons. So you can, for example, have like a nice autumn flare here, like so. So areas, very useful, very fast. And these are the 6 object types that you have, the main ones. But then when you go one tab further, you have overlays. Now, overlays is something that is very useful. For example, the grid, if you want to create a board game background, you can have this grid that you can change, different zooms, different placements of the grid. So you can really change this as you like. This is more for flair. You have wind roses that you can move as well and that you can resize and whatnot. We have different wind roses for Phairos Studio that you can pick from. And we have scales in case you want to tell the players how far they want to go. So those are the overlays, and that's all nice. And last one, we have the themes. Themes are very important because you don't want to color everything individually. And themes are mostly for color. So here, for example, and let's maybe remove the grid for a little bit because it's a bit annoying. The land is colored brown, but maybe you want a more green land. So you just change that here and everything will adjust. You can also change the coast color, the ocean color, the river color. All of it is kind of at your disposal. And then if you say, okay, I want to try out something else, you just create a new theme or you duplicate the theme that you had, and then you can instantly switch between the themes to give your map a different look. So this was the editing world of Phairos Studio. Let's go to kind of the world view. So here you have, first of all, the option to save your map. To export your map as a PNG, you can either select a rectangle to only export a part of it, or you can export the entire map and you can choose your resolution as you like. You can also change the resolution of your map in general. So if I now do this, the map will basically, if I choose a higher resolution, get more space on the lower and right side that I can populate. Importantly, there's also a library function. Themes, labels, paths and wind roses, symbols and areas, and the land templates all are part of the library that you can add. So, for example, we have heraldry, but it's of course a limited library. So if you want to add your own heraldry, you can just click this button, you can add a folder, and then within the folder, like I've, for example, created here, this folder, you can just add more and more images. Also, here, when you go back to map, you can also create parent-child relationships by just clicking on this. When you have saved the map, you can add a node, and when you click on the node, you say either you link a new map, which will prompt you with a rectangle that you select, and that will then source from the landmass here, a new map, or you link an existing map. So all the maps that I have already created, I can link here, and then this will basically be something that you say, okay, load the map. So now you have all these nodes on your map that you can link, and you can then basically zoom in. Last is the panorama mode. Here you can select any of the objects that you have minus the overlays. So you cannot select wind roses, but you can select land or this mountain range, for example. And that will give you a window where you can add an image or where you can put in text and change the name. So this is kind of for you in your world to give a description to your different features. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this small tour through Phairos Studio. See you in the next tutorial video. Bye bye.